There we go. Okay, so tonight we're going to be talking about giants in the Bible, a very different subject for us. We normally talk about the New Testament and what Jesus means to us and what Jesus commands us to do. But I thought just throwing in something a little different tonight. We're going to talk about the giants in the Bible. So let's explore the Bible and find some interesting facts we should all know about, talking about the giants. The Bible mentions giants several times, but notably in the book of Genesis, where they are called the Nephilim. So the Nephilim were said to be the offspring of the sons of God, meaning the fallen angels, and the daughters of men, normal human beings. They were described as being very great and men of renown. The Bible also mentions giants in the book of Numbers, where the Israelites encountered the Anakim, the tribe of giants who lived in the land of Canaan. And Anakim were so tall that the Israelites were afraid of them and said, "We are like grasshoppers in their sight." So I'd like for us to go to those passages of scripture, Genesis 6, verses 1 to 4. Let's go there first. Now it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, and they were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves of all they chose. Verse 3, and the Lord said, "My spirit shall not strive with man forever, for he is indeed flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. 4, there were giants, the Nephilim, on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown. Then the Lord saw the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually all the day." Wow. I think if we read that, it makes it very clear that man's heart and his thoughts are evil continually and all day. We just have to look around us today and we can see how evil men are, how the people of this earth has destroyed it, have walked away from God, has desecrated everything, and have become Antichrist. So sad, but it is the truth. Let's go to Numbers 13. Numbers 13, verses 33. Let me just have a look. There we go, verse 33, and it says, "And there we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak, who come from the Nephilim, and we seemed ourselves like grasshoppers, so we seemed to them." So I'm going to just go through and read it from the King James. It's the New King James. It says, "There we saw the giants, the descendants of Anak come from the giants, and we were like grasshoppers in our own sight, and so we were in their sight." In Deuteronomy 3, verse 11, "For only Og, the king of Bashan, was left of the remnant of the Rephaim. Behold, his bed was a bed of iron. Is it not in Rabbah or Ammonites, or of the Ammonites? 9 cubits was its length, and 4 cubits its breadth, according to the common cubit." So we did some research on what a cubit is. 1 cubit is 1.5 feet. So this will make Og, King Og, 13.5 feet high, or approximately 14.2 meters tall. Now, 4.2 meters tall, which is quite big. So in Deuteronomy 3, verse 11, "For only the king of Bashan was left, the remnant of Rephaim." Now, this was a part of the tribe of the Nephilim, the Anaks. So behold, his bed was a bed of iron, and is not in Rabbah of the Ammonites. So we can see that he was a giant and he was a descendant of the Ammonites, but also the Nephilim. All right. So the king's bed was approximately 4.2 meters long and 6 meters wide. So we can just imagine how tall King Og approximately was. 3.8 meters tall, and I mean 3.8 because his bed was 4.2. So if we take the beds that we sleep in is about 200 millimeters from the headboard to our heads and approximately 200 millimeters from our feet to the end of the bed, approximately. So I guess that qualifies as a giant. I think standing at 3.8 meters tall is approximately about a 2-story house. In Deuteronomy 2 verse 21, a people great and many, as tall as the Anakim, but the Lord destroyed them before the Ammonites, and they dispossessed them and settled in their place. So here is a skeleton that was found that I managed to find on a reputable website, and we could see just from where he's standing, the laying down, shall I say, he could be a pretty tall guy. So these photos have been rejected as fake by some institutions, but I'm looking at this with a different view, because the institutions that say they are fake don't believe in giants at all. And they say that giants in the Bible has been debunked and it's not giants as in giants. So I'm sure there are some fake ones, but we'll just move on. So if God said there were giants, as we have just read in Genesis and Numbers and the other books of the Bible, if God says there are giants, then I will believe God. And before I believe some scientist that is an antichrist and believes in the Big Bang Theory. How credible can you be if you insist that we all come from nothing? That's right. The Big Bang went poof, from nothing to nothing. We become this intricate human being, but we come from nothing. There's no credibility in that. So for me, as a creationist, I believe in Jesus Christ and the Holy Trinity. I do believe that there is some skullduggery that took place by the Big Bang Party, and no pun intended. All right, so if we have a look at the size of this and we have a look at it in perspective to the size of 3.8 meters or 3.6 meters, however tall you are, if you're over 3 meters, you're very big, you're a giant. So the Smithsonian is one of the bodies that I spoke about earlier on. The Smithsonian Institute categorically denies that there were giants and they ever existed. However, they push the narrative that only dinosaurs existed at the time, and we have all the skeletons to prove this, which is true. We've seen all these skeletons that have arrived. However, in the Bible, we go way back to the beginning of time. There isn't a word called dinosaur. Dinosaur was only recently, I think in the early 1800s, when a paleontologist found these big skeletons amongst all the other giants, but focused purely just on the dinosaurs. The Bible doesn't use the word dinosaur, by the way. It actually uses the word dragons. Now, that's a whole new other topic we're not going to touch on tonight, but it just gives you an indication that the credibility of the Smithsonian Institute and all the other scientists that are out there to say that giants never existed. However, I want them to explain this is in our own backyard. And in Mpumalanga, there is a giant footprint in this rock. And apparently this was formed a couple of thousand years ago. And so how do these people then say that does not belong to a giant, or that was just to create the way the rock formed, if you know what I mean? We know that this is I was actually there myself, and you can go there. There are tours that you can go and have a look if you're in the Mpumalanga area. There's a bigger version. I just blew it up. But if you have a look at the size, normally there's a man standing on the right-hand side there. So if you check where the man is standing, approximately where that is over there, his head is only about that high if he stands in the footprint. You can go on the internet, you can find it. But anyway, that just gives you an idea that these giants existed. You can see the big toe and all the other toes that go with it. No debate. Then also, this is a human footprint and a dinosaur footprint at the same time. So if you have a look at the three-toed toad, as in not toads, quack, quack, but toes, you can see that there is a human footprint at the same time of this dinosaur. So once again, the scientists are saying that humans and dinosaurs never lived at the same time, but yet the science and the evidence is there. And this is apparently also a number of thousands of years old, but they say it's a couple of 100,000 years old. Anyway, that's what they say. So let's get back to what the Bible says. Are the Anakites the same as the Nephilim? In Numbers 13, 32 to 33, where 10 of the spies describe the Anakites and the Rephaite tribe as descendants of the Nephilim. And there we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak, who came from the Nephilim and were in our sight as grasshoppers, and so we are in their sight. So we can see that the Nephilim go back to the book of Genesis that we have read already, and we can see that. So interestingly, the book of Samuel refers to the 5 stones that David carefully selected for his sling from the nearby stream. Further reading of the surrounding passages shows that David's relatives were all involved in the deaths of the other giants of the Goliath family. So apparently Goliath had 4 other brothers or 5 other brothers. We're not 100% sure, but we know he had a number of brothers, and they were all defeated. There can be other interpretations for this and various types of symbolism, but it appears likely that the several giants may have been from the Goliath's family, further suggesting that an autosomal dominant inheritance, we are talking about a genetic defect in the family of Goliath. And it also says there that the reverse also happened, where Ishbi-Benob, please, if I say this wrong, I'm sorry, Goliath's son is credited with almost killing King David until a swift intervention of David's nephew, Abishai, and that's in 2 Samuel 12, verse 16. So clearly the intellect or agility was not deficient in some of the giants, and the myopathy seen in some cases of the pituitary disease in later life is not a direct issue in the young giants. So if we have a look at the size of these giants, we can see that they were pretty agile, they were able to move, and they were pretty smart and intelligent people. So the giants from Gath were presented after the flood. One possible answer to the often raised question of why the Nephilim giants present before the flood were not eradicated by it. Could it be that new mutations of the AIP gene or other genes caused new families of giants to appear? Now, at this stage, there were a lot of evidence that, according to the scientists out there, that the gene was actually eradicated in the flood, and only Noah and his sons and their wives were then kept alive. Now, there's also another suggestion that the Nephilim were lifted up. Now, I don't know where that comes from, because it's nowhere in the scripture where it actually refers that some of the Nephilim, the giants, were actually lifted up off the earth. But anyway, that stays out there. So we can only understand that when Goliath and the sons of the Rephaim of the Anakim could suggest he may also have been some Anakim relative. Now, we never know because we don't know the wives. The gene could have been resident in the wives of the sons of Noah and his wife. So families of giants have been described in the medical literature, but this may only be one of the oldest and most famous examples to be documented. So perusal of archaeological literature of that period gives evidence of giants being excavated by numerous fake artists. Now, we know that there are people out there that do like to draw numbers to their sites and have fake sites, but we know from technology that this that the bodies of the giants were uncovered at that time. So technology now exists to extract DNA from giant skeletons, and if any new excavation in the Middle East unearth a skeleton suggestive of Goliath or his tribe, or any of the Nephilim or the Rephaim, or of Og or similar biblical giants, more proof may be obtained by careful DNA analysis. So they are able to take DNA samples out from the skeletons that are there. So most countries and civilizations have stories about giants in their culture. So in Greek and Roman times, giants were an integral part of their history. Over documents and stories of giants who once piled mountains up to the stars and were destroyed when Zeus hurled his thunderbolts at them in Greek mythology. Homer, in his Odyssey, describes many giants, often the Cyclops. He was a one-eyed giant, including the cannibal Polyphemus and Laestrygons. So the Cyclops apparently built the great stone walls of Argus, or Tyrannus, or Mycenae. Several European legends attribute construction to the megalithic remains, including the Stone Age. So to giants, so clearly they were very useful, and records of primeval man had greater strength and abilities and knowledge and skills that we do not have today at all. And men of the time were but degenerate compared with them. We were actually puny compared to the giants at that stage. And just to remember that when, if we take Egypt, for example, many of the stones that were carried, many of the stones that were cut precision to millimeter, a distance between the slabs that were put together, the highly polished granite slabs, all these things we have to take into account. So there's a lot of things we don't understand or know because of the information that was lost over the period of time. So Geoffrey of Monmouth, in his History of the Kings of Britain, tells of the exploits of Brutus, the first king who landed on British shores in Totnes in Devon, and found the land inhabited by men of no normal stature, meaning giants. So the Annual Register of Cornwall for 1761 documents that the tin mine of Tregonway fell at a stone coffin 11 foot 3 inches long, containing a skeleton of a man estimated to be probably at 10 feet. It matches pretty much with King Og, who was probably around about the same size. So clearly giants migrated as far as the British Isles fairly early in history. We can see that from the Middle East, where most of the giants were at that particular time, they did migrate up north. So Angus MacAskill, 1825 to 1863, a Scottish giant born on the island of Berneray and the Wooden Isles, stood 7 foot 9 inches tall. Sorry, the Western Isles stood 7 foot 9 inches tall. At his Memorial Museum of a life-size model illustrates his acromegalic features, while documentation alludes to other giants in his ancestry. So once again, we're back to this point where the Smithsonian Institute categorically deny that giants exist. We can see, and there's evidence, documented evidence, that the giants do exist. So in Northern Ireland, we know, of course, that the giants' causeway columns of a hexagonal and octagonal basalt could only have been handled by a group of engineering conscious giants who ran a combined operation with the giants of Scotland to facilitate easier access between the two sister countries. Before it collapsed, the causeway stretched as far as the island of Staffa, which is also famous as the home of another Scottish giant, Fingal, whose cave was remembered by Mendelssohn. Charles Byrne, another Irish giant, was born in Littlebridge, Northern Ireland, in 1761. His father was native to the area, but his mother was Scottish. Incidentally, he was supposedly related to the Knight brothers, the tallest identical twins at 7 foot 2 inches, born in nearby, oh my gosh, Magherafelt. I hope I've said that right. He grew rapidly, and in his late teens featured in street shows in Ireland and later in London on occasion with the Knight brothers. After his death, his skeleton was acquired by the surgeon John Hunter and was eventually deposited in the Hunterian Museum in London. In 1909, Harvey Cushing, a Boston neurosurgeon, and Sir Arthur Keith, a museum curator, documented that he had enlarged pituitary, excuse me, fossa, concluding that his gigantism was most likely due to the pituitary abdomina. Recent DNA studies have confirmed that mutations within the aryl hydrocarbon receptor interacting protein AIP gene cause pituitary tumor. I am not a doctor, I can't say these words, and now recognized as a cause of familial pituitary adenomas, displaying autosomal dominant inheritance and variable expression. Okay, those words, I'm sorry, I can't speak or pronounce those words. The hereditary aspect of pituitary disease is not new. The first recorded patients with isolated familial acromegaly were the Hugo brothers, Antoine and Baptiste, in the 20th century. Their heights were over 2.3 meters, and they had 5 normal siblings looking at the photograph. So I want us to go down and have a look. This was done in 1882, and let's have a look at the photographs. And there we can see that they were in fact photographed. And so once again, we have evidence that prove the Science Smithsonian Institute incorrect. We're going to look at some more photographs later. It is not clear if Finn McCool, the Scottish or Cornish giants, were related. Perhaps they were, and if excavations ever commence around Staffa or a tooth or bone are recovered, we may get genetic confirmation on some unknown genetic ancestry of the giants inhabiting the British Isles. So we just want to acknowledge the people that wrote this information. And my research was Professor Marta Korbonitz, and the references were Cushing, H. Philadelphia, 1910, the pituitary body and its disorders. So we can see for a fact that giants existed those days, and not just in the 1700s, 1600s, and the 1800s. Here we can see clearly how tall these people are. I would imagine that guy's probably around about 5'8", 5'7", guessing. But then just have a look at how much higher that person is over there. And then on the picture on the right, I would imagine those were midgets. That is a normal man, and then we have a giant. I would imagine they had these traveling shows as the weird people. Another one, Joseph Dussoc, that's French, I can't pronounce it, but that gives you an idea, once again, on how tall the people were, the giants were. There's another one on the right hand. I think that could be around about the 1800s, if I see correctly. Sorry, I'm just catching mosquitoes. All right, there we go. This is fairly newer. This is in 1920, if my memory serves me correct. And we can also see by the clothes that they're wearing, a very tall man. I think he's more than 2.8 meters, maybe nearer to the 3-meter mark. And there we have another picture. This is also going back to probably the 1700s, 1760s, 1800s. This is a French photograph that was taken. And once again, we can see the height of the door frame that was made at that particular time. So we can see then, just by the evidence, that these doors were made actually for tall people as well. So this is not just an anomaly. On the right-hand side, in this guy posing as a boxer, I would not want to fight him in the ring. And then we have a normal man. I would imagine a curator with a sword. And if you go to Scotland, in Edinburgh Castle, there is a sword that's probably around about that length, maybe not as big, but I've seen it with my own eyes. Pretty tall. And then here is a photograph of a man in his regalia fighting, and we can see the size of that sword, which is pretty big. And then there we go. That's our slideshow finished. But I would just like to once again get your feedback on this. And the thing for us that's most important for us is, we know that there are giants. We know that there were giants. And I think the most important thing for us is to just, if you have any questions or want to contribute to what we were talking about, I'd love that right now.